Hey everybody, welcome back to Auto Auction Rehabs. And today what we're going to do is work on this beast here. This is the 403 horsepower 350, mated to the 500 horsepower capable rebuilt transmission from Jegs. And the reason it's been sitting on this stand for a few days, I know you haven't seen it sit for a few days, but trust me it has, is because I thought I had a problem right over here with this manifold. So I called the builder and I said, I think I have a problem with the manifold. And I sent them some photos and they got back with me the next day. And they started out with, we're 98% sure that that is just a superficial casting flaw. I thought, okay. Well, it did run on the dyno without any problems, and they sent it to me like that, so it must be all right. And then he says, but that other 2% leaves us wondering, so what we're going to do is send you a new manifold. I thought, wow, okay. Now that's customer service. I'd buy from them again. Sure. So over the last few days, what I've done is I've ordered parts and fasteners and the correct water pump and hoses, and probably haven't ordered everything that I need, but we'll make it work for right now. Good enough for now. So here's what I want to do. I want to open up some of these boxes. I'm not going to bore you with all that, but I do want to open up this new manifold box while I have you here with me. And then I will go along and open up all the others, and then we'll come back and start taking the old one off. And replace it with this new one. I just want to see what it looks like. We'll unbox it on video. Well, look at that. Isn't that nice? Two brand new gaskets. I want to put them someplace clean. What's in here? I don't know. Maybe new bolts? Well, I'm not sure. We'll open that in a minute. I want to get to the manifold. Whoa. Now that is a much, much cleaner casting. There's no name on it. So who is this made by? I'm not sure. But you know what? I'm not so much into the name as I'm into the performance. And this thing is a beautiful clean casting from what I can tell. So what I need to do is get over here, get this one off, pull the distributor, loosen the bolts, take this one off. The new one even comes with the brass plugs in it, so that's cool. I'll need to pull the plugs so that I can turn the distributor to where I know exactly where it is, so that when I drop it back in, I'm in the same spot within a couple of degrees. So the first thing I'll have to do when I start the beast is to have the timing light hooked up. Pull the plug so that it's easy to turn. I can get onto the timing mark. I can remember where the timing mark is. I'll make a note of that. I'll draw a line on the distributor itself to where the pointer is, and I want to make it to where it's darn close to number 1. I mean, it would be simple if I were taking this out and putting it back in, because Blueprint makes a mark back here as to where it is at the end of the dyno run. But we're not putting this one back in. So as you can see, in comparison, This one is a lot rougher casting than the other one. Anyway, that's a call for me. I'll get started on opening all this stuff up, and we'll come back in a minute. Okay guys, I'm going to try and do a voiceover instead of playing music during this high-speed video. Basically, what I'm doing now is preparing the engine to be able to turn it over by hand so that I can set the distributor to 8 degrees before top dead center. Pulling the plugs out to make it easy, and turning the engine over. You probably didn't catch it on there, but I had my thumb over the number 1 cylinder to check to make sure I was on the compression stroke, and lo and behold, once I turned the engine and pulled the cap off, I was pointed at number 1. But when taking this out and then replacing the manifold, those marks that were made on the distributor mean absolutely nothing. So I put some new marks on there, so that when I drop it in, those marks line up. That means I was at the timing area that was there to begin with. So comparing the two manifolds, making sure everything's okay, as far as, you know, it being the same thing with the same fittings and whatnot. Removing the bolts, and I had a little bit of difficulty, or it wasn't difficult, I had a bit of a concern when I was pulling that original manifold off. As a matter of fact, you'll see here in a few seconds that I stopped the video because I made a phone call to Blueprint and I said, hey, you know, I've never messed with Vortec heads, and I've actually never had to pull off a new manifold that's been seated like this. The last time I did this was in the early 80s, and we just had rubber gaskets and we didn't use silicone. So they kind of laughed and said, yeah, you know, what you need to do is to take a razor blade and slip it in above the China rail, between the manifold and the China rail, and just loosen that up a bit with a razor blade, because it's been sitting now for probably 2 years, and just loosen that up, and then you should be able to get a screwdriver under there and just tap it off. I mean, it's not like you're reusing the manifold. I'm sending it back to them, but you know, it just wanted to make sure I wasn't doing something wrong, and I didn't want to avoid any warranties by doing something wrong, so I called just to double check. I mean, doesn't hurt to double check. So I found that the valve covers were probably going to prevent me from pulling the manifold off, so I removed them, and we got a nice view of inside the engine. Really nice looking, very, very clean. Took quite a while to make sure that I got all of the silicone that was on there. I got it off using a razor blade and a scraper, and being very, very careful that none of that stuff fell into the oil gallery. That's the last thing you want, is silicone floating around in the engine clogging things up. So I was pretty meticulous about making sure nothing got in there, and that took a little while. I mean, I know you guys that have done this quite a bit, you probably slide a blade over it and call it done and put it back together and no big deal, but you know, this is a one-time shot for me, so had to make sure I did it correctly. So there's a lot of cleaning and making sure that everything is indeed done correctly and everything's clean and nothing left behind on the China rails. And there we go. All right, well, we made progress. That was a bear to take off. And I actually called the builder and said, look, I am afraid of breaking this manifold while I'm trying to get it off. What the heck is holding that thing on? I said, silicone can't be that strong. He laughed. He goes, oh yeah, it is. The best way to get these off, he said, is to run a blade right along the china wall into the silicone. Run it through a few times. All right, and that will loosen the bond partially, and then you can just tap it off. Then the silicone that has eased up here and here and here, that all has to be taken off very carefully. Use a razor blade and scrape it off, and then I'll come along and wipe everything off with some brake clean, let it sit for a while, and we will reassemble. I'm pretty darn sure I didn't get any specks down in there. What I did get was a little bit of lint from the rag I'm using. Probably not the best choice against cast iron. I'll get that out. But look at this, isn't it pretty? I like it. I like it a lot. And those are supposed to be roller lifters. Let's see if I can get a good shot at one over here. I would presume they are, based on the view from the top, that they are rollers. Yeah, definitely. There's one that's on the lower portion of the rotation. You can see the roller in there. So that's cool. I've never had a roller motor before. What would be cooler is if the rockers were roller as well. I just don't know if you can do that with these heads where the guides would sit. But these are 291 Vortec heads on a blueprint block with a roller cam, and puts out 403 horsepower on the dyno. Now this manifold that I just got, she's pretty. Looks exactly like the other casting, except for the flaws. I mean, it is a really pretty casting, but the runners and all of the threaded holes and everything seems to match up exactly. So I don't care whose name it has stamped on it, if anybody's. If it's the same, it's the same. The runners do have a little different contour, is the right word. Inside, where the air and fuel mixes, there's sort of a design etched into the manifold runners, and they are a little bit different between the two. I don't know that that's going to make a huge difference, if any. My guess is, based on how things have gone so far, if they're sending me something else, it's probably going to be better than what I had, if anything. Probably should be exactly the same, but if it's any different, it's going to be better. I'm just going to put that out there. Anyway, let me get this thing cleaned up, gather up all my parts, and we'll come back to drop the manifold back on, install the distributor, hopefully in the same spot. I was quite surprised there was another box that had the valve cover gaskets, another carburetor gasket, a tube of the correct silicone to use, and what I'm looking for is another distributor gasket, because that one kind of broke. So let's see if there's another little envelope. I've got some envelopes over there that I wasn't expecting. It could very well be over there in that pile. I'm going to open everything up once I turn this off, see what's over there, because I did get a few things, including a new water pump that is supposed to be the right one, and if that's the case, we'll open that up together. And we'll go from there. All right, everybody, I do thank you all for watching very much. I do thank all the new subscribers. I really do appreciate that. Like and share this with your friends. There's more to come, so hang in there.